This is Ask an Expat with Marcus and Matt from An Expat's Russia, where we answer your questions about what it's like to live, work, and travel in Russia.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode. Today we're going to talk about how much money you can make teaching English in Russia. Also, just another quick side note, if you like the videos that we're creating, like each of them below. It really helps the YouTube algorithm. Marcus, I know you have way more English teaching experience than I do in Russia, so maybe you can kind of start off. Like, what can someone reasonably expect? How much money can they actually make teaching English in Russia?
Okay, so I'm gonna start with the range. I would say, me personally, and many teachers that I've worked with, they have made anywhere from about 50 or 60,000 rubles per month to upwards to 500,000 rubles per month. And some positions are in dollars or euros or pounds with elite families. So let's start with the low end. Now you're going to be, if you're good with people, and generally people, you're charismatic, you have energy,
Personality. You have some personality.
You have a good personality, but and you don't necessarily have qualifications. Like, you can do conversational classes, and you should be making, with private lessons, at least 100,000 rubles per month. I would say 100 to 200. Now, it completely depends, just because it depends how many lessons you want to take on. Now, under the 100,000 ruble mark per month, you will be, if you're at a language school or maybe a kindergarten, that maybe part-time kindergarten. If it's private kindergarten, you should be upwards to 100 or over.
Right.
But let's say you're at a language school, you kind of do your minimum hours, 15, 20 hours, maybe 10 to 20 hours, depending on the language school. You should be, and then you don't do any private teaching, then you'll probably be doing between 60 and 80,000 rubles per month, whether you have qualifications or not, actually, because now of course the competition in Moscow is higher. In 2005, when I was first there, it wasn't so high. But definitely having qualifications, having a bachelor's degree, having studied English, linguistics, some kind of language, something to have on paper, is definitely going to get you in the door over other candidates who don't.
Well, I have a question. So one of the things that I noticed when I was in Russia, teaching English in the very beginning, was that these qualifications, I wouldn't say that they were required, because there was still a super high demand. But where they were required, I found that those were often some of the lowest paid jobs. Because in my experience, like an elite family, they're much more concerned about whether you're a likable person, you're going to engage with their kids, for example, if you're going to be teaching children. Or when I taught business English, they wanted to know that I knew and could converse about U.S. business topics and what was going on in the business world. So even someone who has lots of teaching experience and has taught English around the world, if you can't hold a conversation about finance, then business people aren't going to want to actually have lessons with you. So I think there's a balance, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I found that when you switched from working with adults and young adults, and you went down to in age, and you started working with kids, where you had to have more energy and just more, you were more playful, but also talking all the time. That's where qualifications on paper, of course, having some kind of experience in a kindergarten or children's camp or something would probably put you above other candidates, but they weren't so strict. Families just wanted you to get along with their kid and start speaking. So I found that business clients were very demanding. They would want to see your resume before they hired you, or the class or the company. and you think, well, this is a business class. They're like beginners. What, they can't even talk about business yet.
Right, right.
So I thought that was odd. But yeah, so let's talk about prices per hour.
Sure.
Um,
I think that's what most people want to know.
right. So there's quite a few, factors that come into play. Now we're talking about prices in Moscow. You can talk about prices in St. Petersburg. I don't know.
Sure.
I know there's a difference, but in Moscow, let's say you were doing a 45 to 60-minute lesson. You went to the person's house, office. Typically, it's anywhere from 1,000 to 5 or 6,000 rubles. Um, Practically, for a native speaker who's a good teacher, um, you should be seeing prices at 3 to 5,000 rubles per
Mm-hmm.
60 minutes, and that kind of it includes your travel to the family, to the client. So when we're talking about private lessons, then you would be traveling to their place of where you're going to have the lesson.
One important thing to remember, I think, Marcus, is that if you go through a language school for placements at wealthier families, they're going to take a very big cut of your salary. So, and they're going to try to lowball you as much as possible. So, knowing what the going rate is very important actually, because what I found was that a good school will pitch you out to some wealthy business person, and they'll say 1,500 rubles per hour. You think 1,500 rubles per hour? That's so low, and they're going to charge that person 7,000 rubles an hour or 8,000 rubles an hour, or sometimes more. And so you really have to know what you're worth. And I would say if you have any relevant experience or you have a background in whatever field is that you're going to be talking about with the potential student, the bargaining chips are on your side. And I think you shouldn't settle in a case where you're going to teach at a family's place for 2 or more hours at a time. I mean, you shouldn't accept less than 4,000 rubles per hour today in Moscow for something like that.
If definitely if you have to travel there, right? Um, Now, if you go through a company like a language school, for example, not even a language school, but an agency that places you with business client, like business groups. For a lot of the multinational companies will have like English for their employees,
Right.
and what will happen is there's kind of the companies, they cannot go to you directly unless you have your
You need to
work
have a legal
permit
entity
and
set up. You
everything.
need to, yeah, exactly.
Right. So what happens is they go to an agency, they pay 5,000 rubles per hour. The agency, typically the normal price is between 2,000 and 3,000 rubles per hour. They'll pay you, and so the company that you'll actually be working with, whose employees you'll be working with, um, they go through the agency to streamline everything,
Right.
and you'll typically get half or even less than half. So, but if you're doing private lessons, you go through an agency that they take a percentage of the contract from the client, then you'll be paid much more per hour because the agency got their commission, and then it's basically you get paid directly every time.
Right.
So
Right. So I think one kind of last thing we should touch on here, Marcus, is we talked about kind of the average. If somebody wanted to make on the upper end of the range that we were talking about in the beginning for private lessons, so you were saying between 1 and 6,000 rubles, like what would someone have to really do to make 6,000 rubles an hour, and how could they, how many hours a week do you think it would be feasible for them to actually teach at that type of rate?
yeah, so the first thing that you want to do if you're located in Moscow or St. Petersburg, Moscow is easier just because of the metro system. So if you don't have a car, for example, most don't, you need to um, live in a place where most of the higher paying clients are located. So that's the west of Moscow on the blue line or the purple line. That's because um, between clients, you want to minimize the time that you're going. So if you're able to do that, you can increase your hours with private clients quite a lot. So that's pretty much the key. Minimize your
Travel
transit
time.
time, and I would say, on a
Also,
really
real
busy.
quick, Marcus, real quick, I want to say why we keep sort of focusing on this. I know we've talked about it in other videos, minimizing the travel
Uh-huh.
time. We talk about when you're hired by these agencies to go out to teach lessons. I've never heard of people actually getting paid for their travel time. I don't think that that's a thing. And so that's why we're stressing that the travel, if you have to take an hour there and an hour back, that's 2 hours of unpaid time. That takes a 2 hour lesson to a 4 hour lesson, and your rate per hour is half of what you actually think it is. So you need to keep that in mind. That's why we keep stressing that.
Right. So when I was at kind of my peak, I guess, I would organize all my lessons in one area as best I could, minimize my transit time. I would have maybe max 30 to 35 teaching hours. So not including transit time, but I was on transit a lot, and a lot of teachers who I know as well. But then at certain points, I would just say to different clients, I would say, I can't come for less than 2 hours, or I can't come for less than 3 hours, because I knew they had siblings or a parent, and I would work with the whole family or multiple employees at a company, and that was much easier. Then you'd get more.
Right.
You could even I even gave them a discount. I say, you know what, I'd rather come for 3 to 5 hours if I was talking to a company, and then give them a discount per hour because I didn't want to travel so much. So
Right.
you're not working private or corporate lessons more than 30 hours a week, or if you are, you're busy all the time.
Where you're
So
hustling. Yeah.
yeah, the
Well, I think
the I was gonna say the last thing is um, the second point. So minimize your transit time, and then the second kind of piece of advice is um, understand your strength. Meaning, if you're doing general English, then you could probably get a lot of clients. But if you specialize in a few things like TOEFL, TOEFL test
prep.
preparation,
Yeah.
IELTS prep, what's like
Even some of
ACT or
the entrance
SAT,
exams. Yeah.
GMAT, LSAT very not so popular, but any like British
The A levels
English program,
tests.
the Cambridge, yeah, A levels. What's another one? So a lot of people, a lot of kids, for example, or teenagers, they are already at international schools, and they
Right.
want math or history. So if you can add those types of things to your resume and advertise them, then those are also really good ways to get in the door and charge more.
Right, exactly. And the only other thing I would add as we wrap it up here is, in addition to having, like the English standards types of experience, it's also very important is different types of business experience. So teaching English to lawyers, for example, if you have a law degree, is quite lucrative. Same goes for finance or any other type of business where people are looking and doing business internationally from Moscow. So that would be my advice. I think if you're going to try to maximize the amount of money you can earn, like Marcus said, you need to have like an area that you focus on geographically. You need to find a couple families where you can teach 2 to 3 members of the family. For example, when I was in St. Petersburg, I taught a husband who is a CEO of a huge company. His wife was an HR director at a huge Russian company, and then the children were going to international school. So I would teach between 2 and 3 of them, every week, and that's where you were able to make the money. And if you can do that with 3 or 4 families at the same time, that's where you can start making a lot of money really fast.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I have nothing to add at this point, but in another video, if you have any other questions, put them in the comments below, and we'll answer them.
All right, see you in the next video. This was Ask an Expat with Marcus and Matt from An Expat's Russia. We hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have a question about Russia, let us know in the comments. We'll answer it in the video.